welcome to our first Moonshot session. So you've got that moonshot. So we've been talking about the theme of courage today. And of course, courage for what, right? Well, courage to really change the world. If we think about the original moonshot, you know, trying to put a man on the moon, I mean, that required a tremendous amount of courage. So this is one of a number of sessions we're hosting over the next couple of days, looking at moonshots and looking at how do we actually make a moonshot a reality. So this moonshot is called Black to Green. It's about Ørsted energy. And I first heard of Ørsted when it was called Dong Energy. And I have to admit, after I chuckled a little bit when I heard the name, I found out that this was the real deal, right? So Ørsted was formerly the Danish oil and natural gas company, so a partly or mostly state-owned oil and gas company. And in 2008, its company leadership made an incredibly brave and courageous decision to move the company off of fossil fuel and to become entirely a renewable energy company. So they at the time were about 85% fossil fuel based energy. And so this was a huge, huge commitment that the company leadership was making without a roadmap, right? But they saw the writing on the wall with climate change. They knew the direction this was going. I don't think any of us are surprised that a story like this comes out of Denmark, you know, where the values around this and understanding of climate change are so strong. And so when they looked around how they were going to make this transition, the company did have an offshore wind energy asset and thought, maybe we can be competitive with this. So it was this huge, big bet to divest of fossil fuel assets and to really grow this market for offshore wind, which was not developed at all at the time. And Jens is going to share more about that in a minute. And so today the company, 90% of their profits come from renewable energy, and they've set an ambition to become the world's first green energy major, which I think is so exciting to think about. So this type of wholesale transformation, we talk a lot about this is almost the holy grail in regenerative economy circles, but how does it actually happen, right? What's the behind the scenes of the moonshot, right? What are we not seeing when we look at the press releases and the success stories that are told and what makes it possible? So I'm really pleased today that Jens Gengenbach is here to join us to tell part of that story from his perspective. So Jens is head of R&D at Ørsted, and he's been working in the offshore wind industry for over 10 years. He's been 10 years with Ørsted, so he's been part of this transition from what they call black to green. And he's currently head of R&D, and he's responsible for all the R&D projects in the company at the moment. He holds a PhD in mechanical engineering, and before joining Ørsted, he was at GE Wind as a systems engineer for the offshore wind energy business. So Jens, thank you so much and welcome.
Welcome, everybody. I'm happy to be here.
Well, it's great to have you. I know we're your last meeting of the day, so hopefully we'll leave on a high note, kind of exploring this. Gosh, a decade, right? A decade for you being part of this momentous transition that only so many of us have maybe heard from the outside, but we really don't have a sense of what made it work. So thank you for being with us. Before we kind of dive into the story of Black to Green, I'd love to just get a sense of kind of who you are, Jens. So maybe if you want to share a little bit about yourself and something that we might not know about you that's not on your LinkedIn profile, and also what motivates you to do the work that you do.
I said my name is Jens Gengenbach, and I'm now with Ørsted since 10 years, and I really had a lot of roles, and I think that is my whole career is designed by having a lot of roles and always doing something new. And you can see that on my LinkedIn profile, but it also reflects when I do one of my hobbies is cooking, and I really like to understand how a recipe works, but I can never follow it when I then doing it, because I always need to try something else and see if I can twist it a little bit. So I think that is, I use that also in my daily life at work, to always do things a bit different to see if it works or not. But what does really motivate me is just, I wanted to have a job that I see the purpose of what I'm doing. And then there at Ørsted and also Dong Energy back then, they want to engage in renewable energies was an opportunity for me to just do that. So and that still keeps me motivated, because I think I can have an impact on what happens, no matter at which level I have worked in the company. It's always you contribute. And when the overall vision and the overall goal is something you buy into, then it's easy to stay motivated despite all the struggles and frustrations that everyone has in our daily work life. But you can then put that away and say, okay, I still contribute to that, and that is good motivation.
I love that, Jens. You know, it's something different about your organization from a lot of other companies that our entrepreneurs work in, whereas like your mission is very easy to get aligned with purpose, right? Because it is about the green energy revolution. And a lot of our entrepreneurs are working in companies where they're trying to kind of shift that and make that purpose kind of front and center. So how incredibly motivating to show up to work with a company that, you know, really cares about climate change. It's in the business plan. And I love too the cooking examples, you know, this idea that, using the kind of metaphor of cooking for how we work with other people. We do a lot of cooking in the league. Many of our events, we start with a feast where we cook together, and it's, just love that. So thank you for sharing. Odette, do you mind sharing just Jens has brought a couple pictures along, because I thought before, Jens, you tell the story of the transition, it'd be fun to kind of look at, and hopefully you guys can all see these slides, just what are we talking about with offshore wind energy? Like, what exactly does it look like? So there are just a couple pictures, Odette, if you want to flick through these just to give you a sense of what this is, and Jens, feel free to kind of describe, maybe stop, kind of like, what is that thing?
I think the good thing about the first two pictures is you really see it's wind turbines just out there in the ocean. There is nothing else, and you can look to the horizon on both sides and you don't see anything than water. So that's the first thing to understand. It's really far out, and there has been nothing before we go there and place something there.
So how far, Jens, how far out would a project like this be, like miles or kilometers?
I think it is reaching from 10 to 120 kilometers at the moment, out in the ocean. So some can be from shore, but most of them not. And what you see on this picture is the so-called offshore substation, something I would call the heart of a wind farm, because all the wind turbines, all the energy gets collected here and be prepared and transformed to higher voltage levels, so it can be transported these long distances to shore and be used there.
Yeah, I guess that's a huge issue, is to transmit all this energy being generated so far offshore onto onshore. Odette, maybe if you skip to the kind of last couple, because I think it gives you a sense of the just the size of these things. So maybe those last two.
It is
this one here. Look at this.
When you just think about the sheer amount of turbines that go into one wind farm, I think our last wind farm, Hornsea 2, that we just completed, and now is 164 turbines.
Wow.
And it is just 164 skyscrapers that you have to build within a year.
It's amazing. You're building 164 skyscrapers 120 kilometers off the coast. I mean, this is not for the faint of heart. And this didn't exist, right? Like, this market for offshore wind really, I mean, your company, Ørsted, has developed this. It's incredible. So tell us the story. I mean, I'm so curious. So you joined the company 10 years ago, and you shared with me, Jens, your very first assignment, and I'd love for you to just take us back to that moment when you joined and what you were asked to work on.
Yeah, when I joined, it was there was an industry understanding of that we will never see bigger turbines than 4 megawatt in 25-meter water depths. We will never see something bigger. That is the barrier. We cannot go beyond. And then I entered the company, and my first task was a 6 megawatt wind farm in 35 meters of water, and then design a foundation and calculate loads for that together with the foundation design team back then, where I was just a load engineer in the team. But we just had the challenge, and due to some circumstances, there was a very strict deadline on achieving that first design to be ready to enable an FID or pre-FID decision at that point in time. And then it was just 2 weeks. So I entered a world where I was believing there is a barrier. And then I had 2 weeks to go beyond that barrier and do something completely different. But the good thing is, I think when I would have had a year for that task, I would have more struggles than with 2 weeks. Because when you only have 2 weeks, you go more into decision mode than further consideration mode. You're not thinking about what can I do. You just think about, is this what I do now the right thing? And then you do. And also things where you further before would explore, you now replace with assumptions and decisions. And you just go with a higher risk, right? That is the end of what you do. But as long as you try to do that with some risk mitigation plans in place, it is an acceptable thing to do.
I mean, that is incredible, that story. I mean, what I just think about any person's first day on the job, right? And to be tasked with breaking through the industry-wide held assumptions about the technical feasibility of this wind turbine in 2 weeks, right? And so you did it. So you were able to come up with a design, and was it feasible? Was it built? Like, tell us about like what happened.
Yeah, the design was then taken. It looked like, okay, we can build this. It seems feasible. The cost picture also showed the business case will fly. So a few weeks later, the decision to build the wind farm was taken, and then I think that wind farm that we had to do that design for was operational 2 years later. So. And that is just when you think about that, fabricating all these massive steel structures. And so that's already taking a year, then another year of installation. So it's nearly hard to do it below 2 years. And the project where we did the design for was also bought by Ørsted just a few months before. So that was one of the most fast-tracked development projects in Ørsted. So I think I had another project where I started to work on, which will be built next year. So that shows also that you sometimes have projects that run really fast, and then other times you run into environmental consenting issues, you run into technology challenges, you run into prioritization changes of authorities in our business, and all kinds of things can influence. Sometimes you are really fast, sometimes it takes longer. That can also happen. So I think that's how it is.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting point. How like one company, like we're made up of all these people, and it's not all the same, right? And things kind of move at different speeds. There's kind of different seasons or microclimates within an organization. But I'm curious now. I mean, you have this 10 years of, you can look back over it, right? The 10-year transition. Like, what do you think contributed to Ørsted's success? Because this is a huge risk. And yeah, to make this big bet that, I mean, and with such a nascent industry, you weren't cost competitive. Obviously didn't even have the technology. Why did this work?
Good question. Even looking back, I don't know the exact answer. I can just say what has turned out positive for us. Perhaps more that. But I think what it first needed is focus, so that Ørsted really could succeed. Is we were before our CEO Henrik Poulsen joined the company in 2012. There was a phase where Dong at that time was exploring many options, from wave energy to electrical vehicle charging and thousands of options. And then when Henrik joined, he reviewed all these opportunities and decided to go with two. And one of these two was offshore wind. And that helped us to have sufficient focus again to really make a difference. I think when you're when you are too broad, too explorative in too many areas, and don't have the workforce and the power to explore all these areas, then you need to stay focused and make a difference where you can. That has for sure helped. That there was this full backing and an organization that was wholehearted into it. It was either succeed or die, right? It's also, and I think it really changed the first 5 years. Our industry, really from 2012 to 2017, it was every year like, we will stop this industry. This industry will not succeed. You will never go and really grow. And then I don't know if it was 17 or 18 now. The years get a bit blurry, but then the first really competitive tendering came up, and the costs for offshore wind farm dropped significantly. So from levels of 160 euros per megawatt hour to just 70 within a year.
Wow.
Just to create the competitive tendering rhythm. The industry was a bit prepared to take it, but it was also just really calling for that competition that then made this difference. And just 2 years later, we had the first subsidy-free bid. So where there was no claim anymore for at least subsidies. Now you just need to survive on the market with your asset. But there was a belief that can be done, and I think it is a joint effort of an industry. It's not Ørsted alone. It's also a big success, I think, of our story is that we, at an early point in time, really joined with strategic partners and also were brave enough to create volume in the market. Like we did a framework agreement with what was Siemens back then, where we bought 600 wind turbines. We didn't had projects for 600 wind turbines. We just believed that we'll have sufficient projects to, in the speed they can produce it, we will have projects to install them. And that also turned out to be the truth, but it was a risk for both parties, for us to order and for them to produce, also knowing that it is not all fully backed up, right?
It's amazing. It's like this collective leap of faith. We've been talking in other sessions about how, this isn't a lone ranger sport, right? That it is about like working together so you can take those bigger risks, right? So you're doing it together. And I love this point about focus. I think it's an incredible one. If you look at entrepreneurs that are really successful, they tend to be the ones that have just got that deep, narrow focus, that kind of clarity on where they're going. So they aren't distracted. And what you and others at Ørsted have shared with me is that focus that enabled you, all to kind of get behind the mission, right? We're all kind of working towards this one thing rather than I'm building my division over here, I'm building my division over here, that clarity of purpose was felt by folks. I mean, I'd love for you to kind of share more about that, but did you get the sense that, we were kind of all on one team in a way where I think in some companies you can sometimes get that siloing?
Yeah, I think we definitely had this one purpose shared. Isn't there in such a big company as ours no siloing? It is also there. And this is a problem. Yes, but the good thing is, and that is perhaps because we are a project company. In the end, it was always clear there is this project and we want to build it and it needs to be operational on that date, and then you can just back calculate. So my portion of work needs to happen in this time frame, otherwise this future deadline will not be achieved. And thereby you always could see where you are working into the big machinery, and you were knowing, and you don't bring your piece in a good quality, also the rest will not work. So everyone could feel that, and that was perhaps also one of the drivers in the beginning. That is something, when you grow, it gets a bit lost. In the beginning, everyone was part of a project that had to deliver an asset in the end. Now we have other parts of the organization that are a little bit detached, that just work on improving something that is then used by others to then achieve this goal. That is needed when you grow and still want to stay efficient with what you do, but it also makes it harder for people to really feel this one unit, one spirit. And I think we still benefit from our overall purpose and mission that everyone can sign to. But the direct daily feeling for, oh, when I not deliver, I know this is already on the critical path, that is gone a bit for a lot of people.
Yeah, I sense that. I mean, I guess when you're in a moment where it's like, every year you don't know if you're still going to be around the next year, so my work on this project to get it live is mission critical, whereas now you're a going concern. It doesn't mean that you don't have to worry about your projects, but there's this sense that the market's here, is developed, and we're a business that's going to be around next year. And so I'm curious. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think that sounds too optimistic. I think we were really in doubt if there will be a growth future. Now we are 100% sure that the growth future is there for our business in general. Who will succeed, who will stay, is very uncertain still. It is still a young industry. It is still very competitive. And despite that, now so many governments have raised their renewable energy targets and everything. What we currently see is a situation where a lot of, for example, the VTG suppliers over the last 2-3 weeks announced major layoff rounds because they currently with the supply chain issues and high raw material costs, and so they simply don't earn money. Even that there is a big growth ahead, there can always be challenges in the moment that you have to overcome first to then still work towards that growth. That is, I think, also important. There are phases where you can fully concentrate on the growth, and then you are also really need to accept that you now cannot have such a wide future look, and just need to work with the challenges directly ahead of you to make sure you survive.
Yeah, well, I mean, thank you for sharing the kind of reality, right? From kind of one challenge to the next challenge. But we have a question that's come in, which I think is really important, about the people factor of this, right? Like, how did people feel during this transition? I mean, you can't speak for necessarily other people, but just a general sense of like, how did people feel about in the company feel about this transition? And what do you think were some of those hardest moments when Ørsted was making this big transition?
The hardest moments were all the layoff rounds in the company parts that were not longer seen as strategic core. And that meant just that again and again, areas were either sold off to other owners where they were still a fit, or really shut down. And that was always hard. There was always the try to get people to work in the new areas and have them employed there, but you cannot, not all capabilities are transferable. So that were always, I think that were also the more hard decisions for the management. I was only an employee. I didn't have to take these decisions myself back then. But so I think really taking these decisions and also making sure people understand why are you doing it. What is your goal? Why do you believe this is good? And there we had, at least at that point in time, a few really great leaders that could convey this message in a very healthy way, so that people stayed on board. They also, even when a decision was made to sell a part of the company, they really just worked full in and said, okay, we create value for you so you can go on to your mission with this money from ourselves. That was often also the spirit I got. For sure, some people were frustrated, but overall it was rather smooth in the end. But even, as I said, we were not always sure that the growth will be there. So there was also a bit of a bumpy ride in the first years with people being hired to work on the growth pattern, and then, the growth pattern is gone, we need to ramp down again. Even in a growth area, that was challenging, but I know a few people that have entered Ørsted several times. So.
Well, Jens, we just have a couple of minutes left. Hard to kind of capture 10 years of a transition in your journey with it in such a short amount of time. But I'm thinking, what we talked about when we met before this was just, and what you've kind of been bringing is that you kind of get over one challenge and then there's the next one and the next. And so this is a journey that it never ends, right? And so we talk about these mountains of success. You kind of get to the top of the first mountain and then you stand there and you look around and you notice there's this next mountain even bigger that you have to climb, but you have to go down and you're not exactly sure how you're going to get back up there. So I'm just wondering, I guess the final question for you is, it seems like you've set this, you're now on this journey for the second mountain of success, to become a green energy major, this kind of moonshot for Ørsted and for the world. Can you just share a little bit more about that vision? And I guess looking back, if you're standing on that second mountain of success or that moon, looking back, how are you going to get there? How'd you get there?
Yeah, I think it is really. Now we have an organization that has a very strong heritage in offshore wind, a lot of experts there. But now we need to expand again our capability profile to be a real energy system integrator, look into power to X. A lot of new capabilities need to be built up in a market environment where the market often don't exist yet. So we know the growth ambition is there. We know people want to see it from us, and even then in the R&D area, you are searching for experts in the field, and you just realize everyone is at this moment learning. So you perhaps don't search for an expert; you just search for the one that learns fastest and can share good. But also from looking back for the first mountain of success to the next mountain, I think the most important thing is to not get frustrated when something doesn't work out as planned, and always continue to move on. You will only learn that something doesn't work. Then you can take that as a learning and move on. And also don't try to, and that is perhaps at least my view on new moonshots, there are not many one-shot moonshots. It's often more people climbing one roof and the next climbs to the next roof. And so, but when 1,000 people have done that, then you get quite high and close to the moon. So it's also, when I should say, looking back, what brings the success, don't stop, go on. With each step, you get closer, because you will not find that rocket that you can launch and no one will bring it to you. You just need to go on step by step, make progress.
Jens, that is such a perfect way to end this conversation. Thank you so much. I just love that idea, right? If you think about the original Moonshot, they didn't get there on day one, right? It was more than a decade of, like you said, step by step by step, roof by roof by roof, to finally be able to get to the moon. So keep going, don't stop, find your strategic partners, find the people that you can do it with. And I love this idea too, is that no one's an expert in a lot of the things that we're talking about. So who can learn with you? Who can learn the fastest? And how do you get faster, further together? So Jens, thank you so very much for being with us today at Global Entrepreneur Week. And thank you to you all for being here today. And we look forward to seeing you in our next session and also into our Power Hour networking. So don't miss those opportunities to find your co-travelers for your moonshot journeys. So thank you all. Bye-bye.